Badger fans, welcome to a live Locked On Badgers. We're going to do a fun crossover, talk the Ohio State-Wisconsin game. Maybe ask Doug, who was the last bad Ohio State quarterback? That is a program that has not had to struggle in that realm very much. We're going to get into it on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Really do appreciate it. We have a great guest, and with the great guests, we get right into it. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. New customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And with that, let's bring in our special guest, Doud Lesmerises, podcast, Kings of the North podcast, longtime sports writer for Cleveland.com and Buckeye Talk podcast, Doug. And I think you have more than that going on. What else do you have going on?
Yeah, so thanks for the invite, Ryan. So I did work at Cleveland.com and covered Ohio State since 2005. I left this summer. I'm now with The Podcast, which is an Ohio State podcast. But the reason I left is to start a Northern college football YouTube show and podcast called Kings of the North. We're currently doing it every Monday. We do have a YouTube channel, Kings, KOTNCFB. But the point, Ryan, is that starting next summer, we're going to go 5 days a week, every day on Northern football. So we're going to talk Wisconsin and Iowa and Penn State and Michigan and Notre Dame and Washington and Oregon and Syracuse and Pitt and Colorado and Utah, just as much as we talk Ohio State. I feel like there's a cultural thing there. I think people know what Southern football is. Hey, it matters more down here. And it's like, listen, man, like people in the North love college football too. And I don't know that all of us together like seize that and celebrate that enough. So your Wisconsin fans can listen to you for Wisconsin, great Wisconsin coverage. And then if they want a little bit expansive, talk Northern football, maybe take a couple shots at the South every now and then, they can try Kings of the North.
I absolutely love this. I love the name. I love the idea. What is the sub? And I could deep dive on this. I'm going to try to restrain myself because we have a huge football game to talk about. But what is the southernmost Northern team? Like, where does that line of demarcation run?
We've only spent hours trying to figure this out. So, like, Louisville is not in at the moment. Missouri is not in. Virginia Tech is not in. So, like, they're like sort of the border teams. We kind of feel like with Missouri, if you decided to be in the SEC, you're probably not a King of the North. So, you know, it is pretty clear. I guess maybe the southernmost team might be like Cincinnati. So, it's like we have 6 in the current Pac-12, 3 in the ACC, Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, 4 in the current Big 12, Cincinnati, BYU, Iowa State, West Virginia, and then Notre Dame and the whole Big 10. So it's been great that like Oregon and Washington and Oregon State and Washington State and Deion Sanders is like, we got Deion Sanders in the North. So the whole point is that it's not just the Big 10, but that I do think Wisconsin fans have something in common with Pitt fans and Oregon fans that maybe they don't have in common with Georgia fans or Texas fans, which is fine. But the sport's divided north-south, I think, right? The Pac-12 died because there's no West anymore. The whole sport is north-south. And we want to celebrate and contextualize Northern football success and Northern football culture. So slap on your hoodie. It's like you put a jersey over your hoodie. That's what we decided is the official uniform of Northern college football.
No, I lost you for a second there. Oh, we're back, maybe?
I think we're back. Sorry about that.
No, I love it. I just really quick, we have a low-key that listens to the show all the time. JB is a low-key sleeper Missouri super fan, and he's not going to be happy that he's not in the Kings of the North.
We are open to adding teams. If there are fan bases that want to join us, we will take you. So we're not exclusive, like we're not taking Georgia, though.
No, fair. All right, let's get into this big game coming in. Ohio State coming off a huge win against Penn State, undefeated on the year, coming to Madison, night game. Just the initial read on this, where are you at on the optimism scale? How worried are you potentially about this game?
So they're coming off a physical, emotional win over Penn State. So I know, interacting with Ohio State fans, they are fearful of a trap game. So like that has come up a lot already. Ryan Day on Tuesday was sort of asked about, there's these losses that stick with Ohio State fans. It's the loss at Iowa in 2017, which was actually the week after a huge win over Penn State, and the loss at Purdue in 2018. And so there is a part of the fan base that like is fearful of that. It's one thing to lose to a good team. And I actually think Wisconsin's probably like in the middle. Like this Wisconsin program, certainly, I think Luke Fickell as a coach, the talent of Wisconsin is better than those Iowa and Purdue teams. But also, you know, Wisconsin's not Michigan or Penn State right now. So, and the thing that has certainly been noted is that Ohio State hasn't won by double. I think they haven't won by double digits at Wisconsin since 2000. And when they haven't, 6 of the last 7 times Ohio State and Wisconsin have played, only one of them has been in Madison. So there's been 3 Big Ten title games, 3 in Columbus. It's just like weird, you know, I think maybe COVID got in the way of something, but Ohio State, the program, but also the fans need to remember how difficult Camp Randall is. And I've said this, I was there in 2010 for the opening kickoff return when Ohio State was number 1. And whenever I talk about that, I can like feel myself, I can feel the press box shaking around me. Like that's Camp Randall. That's life in Madison. And it's just not, there's not a lot of people like Ryan Day has never been to Madison as a member of the Ohio State coaching, right? Like they have to realize that. And I think they do, but everybody has to remember what that place is like, especially in prime time, because there's a discussion about how good Wisconsin is on the field, but the idea of this fan base and that stadium, it's been a while, man. It's been a while since Ohio State's had to deal with that.
Well, and I made that point as well, just talking on the show. We talked a little bit about yesterday. Ohio State has had its way with Wisconsin for a while now. But a lot of those games, to your point, are in Indianapolis. They are at Ohio State. And I kind of tend to think that the idea of a trap game, it's easier to have a trap game if it's a 12 o'clock kick, if it's an 11 o'clock kick. A night game seems to me to lend itself to not the environment that is necessarily a trap game. Now, do you feel the physical impacts and after effects of playing a really physical Penn State team? I think that's true, but that's not, to me, that's not really a trap thing. That's just getting beaten up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think they'll be ready for it. And I know just the shorthand around here, when we talked about this Ohio State season in August, it was all about 4 games. And this was one of the 4. So it was at Notre Dame, then home with Penn State, now this trip to Wisconsin, then, of course, the Michigan game. So this is one of the big 4. So it's not like, you know, people have like been taking Wisconsin for granted. And certainly Ohio State fans, I do think, have a lot of affinity and respect for Luke Fickell. And so that part of it is intriguing, but also nobody's like, oh, you know, Luke's gonna, you know, isn't gonna put up a fight against Ohio State. So yeah, I don't think anybody's taking this for granted. It's like the new offensive identity at Wisconsin, super intriguing. Now the starting quarterback's hurt, and obviously Ches Malucci's hurt, and like there's like people are intrigued by this version of Wisconsin, because I do think, speaking for myself, and I think for Ohio State fans, maybe for Wisconsin fans, right? Especially against Ohio State, it felt like the Paul Chryst Badgers just sort of had a ceiling, especially indoors in Indy, of like, okay, like this is a way that Wisconsin's going to be X good, but they're never going to beat Ohio State going about it like this, which, you know, I would guess is maybe why Wisconsin made a change. And it's not that Wisconsin didn't give Ohio State a bunch of really good games in Indy, but just in terms of like indoors hanging with Ohio State receivers, it's like, come on, like how is that actually going to happen? And so I'm intrigued by the new Wisconsin way of doing things. And I think it raises the Wisconsin ceiling. And it's just a matter of, right, can it happen in this game right now? But I know Luke Fickell very well. And I obviously think a lot of Ohio State people think that was a great hire for Wisconsin.
Yeah. And I think that you said you're talking in regards to how a lot of Ohio State fans were looking at this move with Paul Chryst having a ceiling. Badger fans were the same place. A lot of Badger fans also saw that ceiling of you're just never going to beat Ohio State with the way we're doing things, the way we're currently doing them. I want to ask you this question and then get into Kyle Mccord after this segment. A lot of questions already in the chat, and that's some people asking me, how good is Kyle Mccord actually? But I want to lead off with this question. When was the last time Ohio State had a bad quarterback?
Yeah, so probably 2011. So that's a weird year. The Russell Wilson game, the Braxton Miller pass to Devin Smith. But they played a guy named Joe Boserman that year. Part of the time, he started some of the games before Braxton Miller took over as a true freshman. He was a former minor league baseball pitcher. He was like 26 and had a house in the suburbs and was like the Ohio State quarterback because Terrell Pryor left and Braxton Miller wasn't ready yet. So that's sort of an infamous name in Ohio State history. So I think that's the answer. But like the answer of like not in an emergency situation, not when the program blows up. Like it might be like Steve Belisari, like in the early 2000s. Again, that's even before me. Todd Beckman, they made the national title game in 2007 with Todd Beckman, who was like a 6th-year guy taking over for Troy Smith as a Heisman Trophy winner. But, he played pretty well that year. He was kind of a lower rated guy, but they made the national title game with him. So it's been a while. And especially since like Ryan Day got here, like they've had good quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you have to kind of search through your mental Rolodex in your years, be like, I don't know, let's go back 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years speaks to how good that Ohio State program has been at churning out great college quarterbacks.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Kyle Mccord, get deeper into the game. How might Wisconsin spring an upset if it can happen? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. A quick second also to say thank you, as always, to everybody tuning in. You guys are incredible. We really appreciate it. We're going to get to all of your comments next. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Jace Medical. Jace Medical is a great way just to prepare your family, empower your family to protect itself. This is a crazy time in the world, right? There's unrest in the Middle East. There's fires in Hawaii, hurricanes, earthquakes, supply chains get messed up. Jace Medical, you can customize the case, offers an incredible ability to protect your family with customizable antibiotics. You can pick different ones that suit better for your family. You can get a gift card, buy a gift for your family or a loved one so they can get a Jace case of their own. It is a way to empower your family to be protected. Don't get caught unprepared. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication development, or delivery, and ongoing consultation. Go to jacemedical.com, enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. This is the best time to sign for FanDuel. FanDuel, the fastest, easiest, most secure, and simplest betting app sportsbook in America. There's a reason we use it. All new customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. We're going to talk about the Ohio State-Wisconsin line, minus 14.5 for Ohio State right now. We're going to talk about why I am going to bet on Wisconsin. It's because I'm a homer. That's how I roll. I'm going to do it on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss, plus futures, parlays. It is all available on FanDuel. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back into our conversation here. Get into some of your comments. Our great guest, Doug. One of the biggest questions I've been getting here is Kyle Mccord related. This is from Nezza. Is Kyle Mccord overperforming or underperforming expectations?
Not overperforming. I mean, he's a 5-star. The big story around Ohio State. So Kyle McCord's a 3rd-year guy. And when Ryan Day was recruiting that class, J.J. McCarthy wanted to be a Buckeye. And Ryan Day picked Kyle McCord over J.J. McCarthy. And then J.J. McCarthy went to Michigan and told at least one reporter, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to get Ohio State. And he is playing at a near Heisman level this year. Now, he's a 2nd-year starter. Kyle McCord's a 1st-year starter, sat for 2 years behind C.J. Stroud. So, a little inconsistent. There was a quarterback battle. It was a real battle in August. It took them a couple games to figure out the quarterback situation. We really thought the last drive against Notre Dame, they went down the field and won it on the last play of the game. He made a 3rd and 19 throw to set that up. Was nearly picked on that drive, but made some really good throws on that drive. And it's like, okay, Kyle McCord has arrived. Then Ohio State had a bye week. And then they played Maryland next, and he was not very good in the first half against Maryland. It was like, what's going on? We thought this guy was ready to roll. Then he was better in the second half against Maryland, better against Purdue, and he's a little was good against Penn State, against a really good Penn State defense, a little hot and cold, right? And there's a lot of comparisons. C.J. Stroud wasn't perfect right away when he started for the first time in 2021. This guy's a 5-star. This guy's a high ceiling, right? This guy's good arm, can move. So there are high expectations for him. And I think most Ohio State fans think he's on the path, but he's certainly not even, I think, halfway down the path of what he might be. So this is not a locked in 100%. This guy's going to come to Madison and tear it up kind of quarterback right now. And that's not a criticism of him, but it's just a realistic view. So this is not a finished product.
Trying to paint the game script of where Wisconsin, again, speaking from a Wisconsin perspective, where they could potentially take advantage of, you mentioned hot and cold. Where does the cold come from? Is it pressure? Is it starting early? Is it on the road? Where have you seen some of the struggles when you have seen it?
He's been pretty good against the blitz. Actually, he's handled that pretty well. When he had the rough first half against Maryland, it felt like throws were there, and he was, I don't know, seeing ghosts a little bit or not letting it go. So, a little inaccurate at times, but again, like he's not an inaccurate quarterback. So I think it's not like blitz him no matter what, because he has handled that. His numbers on PFF against the blitz are again, pretty solid. Not a ton of deep shots, right? So, and there's certainly some component of this. It's like, it's very hard to talk about Kyle Mccord without talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. And they've just done an excellent job. The last 3 weeks, 13, 13, 16 targets for him, which are all those are career highs. He never had 13 targets in the game last year. So their second best receiver, ABuka, has been hurt. They don't know if he's going to be able to play this week. They're hopeful, but there's a lot, even like Marvin had the game, like the kind of the seal the game touchdown last week on a nice crossing route. Ball's a little behind, right? That wasn't a perfect throw, but he's the best receiver in college football, and he reached behind him, caught it on the move, and scored the touchdown. So, and if Wisconsin fans don't know, they were high school teammates in Philadelphia. So like they have a long relationship going back. So, Marvin Harrison Jr. makes a lot of quarterbacks look good, and certainly Kyle Mccord is smart enough to take advantage of that. And Ohio State's done a really good job of finding ways to get him open the last 3 weeks.
Well, let's go there. Let's stick on Harrison, who leads the Big Ten by a wide margin. Receiving yards, 18.4 yards per clip, 6'4", physical, fast. How do you slow him down, or is it just not going to happen at the college level?
It's really difficult. ABuka is normally their slot receiver, and he got hurt in the Maryland game. So he got hurt that game, and he has missed the last 2 games entirely. So Marvin Harrison Jr. has been playing in the slot about a third of the time the last 3 games, and they've created mismatches for him there, get him out of safety sometimes, makes it a little harder maybe to double cover him, two-way go routes from the slot. They do a good job of motioning him much more. Last year, he pretty much was an X receiver who played to the boundary. And if you put a good corner on him and he's kind of working the short side of the field, it just made it easier to cover him. And they're just making it more difficult. So there were times Penn State corner Kalen King, who's like pretty good, tried to go with him at times. He didn't go with him the whole game, but like that didn't really work. Notre Dame seemed to really always have 2 guys over him, and he did not have huge production against Notre Dame. So especially if ABuka doesn't play or is limited, I'd probably just say, why would you not have 2 guys on Marv all the time and just take your chances elsewhere? Because they haven't run it great. They do have some other guys, but nobody nearly as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. if ABuka's not playing. So at this point, just we're not going to let Marvin Harrison Jr. beat us would not be a bad strategy in my mind.
Yeah. What is the feel with ABuka? Does it feel like he's playing this weekend, or just no clue?
So I think it's an ankle, right? And he had his ankles were really taped up. He did warm up before the Penn State game. He was on the field going through things with trainers, and it looked like he was begging to play. And so it for instance, Denzel Burke, their number 1 corner, also did not play last week. He didn't practice at all last week and wasn't anywhere to be seen on game day. So ABuka is much further along. ABuka tried it out and couldn't go. So now another week later, will he be able to go against Wisconsin? My guess would be yes, but sometimes, right, with these ankle injuries, if you tweak something during the week, or even if he does go, he's a slot guy who's good at finding open spaces. Is he going to be able to maneuver like he normally does? But my guess on ABuka would be he goes. My guess on Travion Henderson, the running back who didn't play last week, would be he goes. And then Denzel Burke, the corner, is probably a little bit more difficult just because he basically did nothing last week.
Gotcha. This is great stuff, man. We're going to come back. We have one more break. We're going to come back and ask Robert Sorsen has a question for Doug. Ohio State's biggest weakness. Where does he think that might come into play this weekend in Madison? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. We're going to take one more quick break for our friends of the show over at eBay Motors. Listen, I've talked about my car problems. I have issues with my cars, and eBay Motors is there for me to help take care of some of those issues, whether it's, when I got carjacked, or when my other car, I hit a tree with my Jeep because I didn't want to be late to work. These are all things that are a part of my history and part of my fabric of who I am. eBay Motors is there to help me through those issues. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP, bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions to apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's finish this segment off. Really, really do appreciate, as always, Doug checking in here. Doug, this is a question from Robert Sorensen. Where is Ohio State's biggest weakness, in your opinion, coming into this weekend?
Yeah, offensive line and run game combined, right? So I thought coming into this season that they were as uncertain at offensive tackle as any pair of tackles I'd seen in 19 years covering Ohio State. Their left tackle was a right tackle at San Diego State last year. And Ohio State's right tackle is like a fourth-year guy who was a lower-rated recruit who, in a lot of years probably wouldn't ever start at Ohio State. They played okay. I thought maybe Penn State's edge guys would have a chance to be a problem last week, and they didn't wreck the game. So the Ohio State offensive line actually held up pretty well. They have not been great in the run game. They're not super physical in the run game. I think Ohio State averaged like 2.5 yards per carry last week with their running backs. Now, part of that is Travion Henderson's the most explosive guy. He's been in and out of the lineup. Mayan Williams has been in and out of the lineup. Like, they've had a hard time even knowing week to week who's going to be healthy in the running back room. But they're not running it great, and they didn't run it great last year. So, if you can get them into a situation where they have to rely on the run game, both offensive line and running backs, that's not a sure thing for them right now. So that is the offensive line probably has been a little better than I thought, but it's still far from, they had their left tackle last year was a top 10 pick, and their right tackle is currently starting for the Cleveland Browns as a rookie. So it's like they just were much better at the two tackle spots last year.
Talk to me about Ohio State defensively. Really, really good this year. Held Aller to 18. I was like 18 to 40 something. I think third in the Big 10, 10 points a game, right on those areas. This feels like the best Ohio State defense Wisconsin has faced in a couple of years. Yeah,
it's definitely the best Ohio State defense since 2019. That was a defense that had Chase Young. So this is year 2 of the Jim Knowles defensive system. They hired him as the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State last year, $2 million a year, the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. It was like, come save us. And then they were pretty good defensively last year. And then Michigan hit big plays all over the place. And Georgia hit a huge play on them. And this idea of like they gave up too many big plays and it killed them. Like, it has to get fixed. And it's fixed. Like, it's been remarkable. The whole story, spring football in the preseason was, hey, year 2 of a system. Everybody knows it better. We're not just teaching it. Guys are now understanding it and playing faster. They're not making mistakes. And it's one thing to say it, but that's what they've shown. So the whole discussion around Ohio State is like, hey, is this a defense first team? Is this more like the Jim Tressel era? Because like they scored 20 on Penn State. They scored 2 touchdowns against Notre Dame and 1.
Right.
This is not the offense. This is not a 40-point-a-game offense, which it has been under Ryan Day. But they're winning because the defense is really good and does not give up anything explosive. I think they have not given up a single play of 40 yards or more this season. They're like one of 2 or 3 teams in the country to do that, and that's what killed them last year. So all praise to the defensive coordinator, to these players who are executing it, and then they do just have better talent. The secondary is really good. So the secondary is really good, and it's certainly been a defense-led team so far, which is kind of a weird thing to say when they also have Marvin Harrison Jr.
and a 5-star quarterback in the Ohio State pedigree. Really quick, we'll wrap up on this. And again, make sure everyone listening, go check out Doug's podcast, Kings of the North, Northern College Football. I love the idea behind it. Where do you see the game going? And kind of two-parter, what would be the game script, in your opinion, for Wisconsin to pull the upset here?
Yeah, so it's do whatever you have to do to limit Marvin Harrison Jr. Make Ohio State try to run it, and then Ohio State did a pretty good job against Penn State's run game last week, but I've always loved Braelon Allen, man. Like Jim Knowles was talking about him today as a tackle breaker, and just like that idea of, they have good linebackers. They had some trouble in the Notre Dame game with the Notre Dame run game and Audric Estime, which isn't, a bad comparison for Braelon Allen. They were in the wrong gap sometimes. It felt like, they weren't completely locked in there. So, I mean, just like you think about that, Ohio State's had 2 really good wins. They've been very low scoring, and they've been a little bit of a slog both times. So in the Notre Dame game, TreVeyon Henderson had a 61-yard touchdown run, and ABuka had like 3 or 4 huge catches. And then in the Penn State game, Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of almost won it by himself. Mm-hmm. So if Wisconsin can limit the explosive plays for the Ohio State offense and make them march, and then try to march on the other side and hold the ball a little bit, like that's the formula. And then just let the people in Camp Randall go crazy, man, because it's a hard place to play. So, but is this not the discussion every time Wisconsin and Ohio State play, Ryan? You have to limit Ohio State's explosive plays. So easier said than done. And I will say this has been a discussion point here. A lot of respect for Luke Fickell. When he was the coach at Cincinnati, it was like before everything came together at Cincinnati. They came into Ohio Stadium that week. Luke Fickell didn't let any of the Cincinnati players talk. They were tight, and they got their doors blown off. They did not compete. And Luke was incredibly frustrated after the game. And I think playing Ohio State, he handled it exactly wrong. And I would imagine he learned from that. So I think he so much wanted to treat it as another game. He didn't treat it as another game. And so there is a mental component of this, because Luke Fickell's best teams are good at football. The one time he coached against Ohio State, his team did not play anywhere close to its best. So I think one of the keys for Luke this week is just making sure he allows his program to put its best foot forward. Because I mean, I'm just like, I covered Luke when he was the head coach here for a year. When Luke wanted to go be a head coach, I sat in his house with Luke and his wife, Amy, and we talked about his ambitions and his goals. It was very hard for him to leave Ohio State. His whole life was here, right? He's as much of a Buckeye as anybody I've ever come across, but he is a perfect fit for Wisconsin. But this is hard for him. Like, this is his, there's a piece of him that's still here, and that's nothing against Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So I think he really has to make sure he's in a headspace so his team can be in a headspace to play their best football.
Well, I wanted to pivot onto that question, because I had the perfect thought to end this conversation, and I could talk for hours with you, by the way. You're awesome and incredibly insightful. People are terrified that if anything happens to Ryan Day from a coaching standpoint, that Luke Fickell is the next guy at Ohio State. That was the only thing people were worried about when Luke Fickell was hired to Wisconsin.
So it's not unreasonable. I don't think Ryan Day is in a hurry to get out the door here. Like, they're not going to, if they lose to if they lose to Michigan for the 3rd straight year, like, they're not going to fire him. Like, that's not where this is. That's not a realistic conversation. Would he maybe ever leave for the NFL? Like, college coaches aren't exactly succeeding in the NFL. So I don't know if they're coming to knock on his door right now. And he would never leave for another head coaching job. So Ryan Day's son is a high school quarterback in Columbus and is a freshman right now. And like, all that family stuff really matters. Like, he is not in a hurry to get out of here. I will say that Mike Vrabel is a name that comes up a lot too. Mike Vrabel and Luke Fickell are best friends. What if Mike Vrabel ever got tired of the NFL? Like, what would he ever leave the NFL for? Maybe Ohio State. So like, my guess is Luke's going to be at Wisconsin for a long time. I don't think Ryan Day is going anywhere anytime soon. And I don't know that if Ryan Day left, it would immediately be, call Luke. Do you want it? Yeah, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, so that's 2 things that are in Wisconsin's favor. And so I think it's a great fit for Luke at Wisconsin. I think it's a great, it's a great marriage between the two. And so I would tell Wisconsin fans not to have that front of mind.
We can't help it though, right?
No, of course. It's understandable. But there's also a part of Luke, I think, that I don't Not that he's not ambitious, but I almost think he might like trying to do it at Wisconsin more than he'd like trying to do it here, you know?
Right.
So, like, let's make Wisconsin, let's elevate Wisconsin. Let's get Wisconsin back to what they were under Barry Alvarez. Like, rather than if you come to Ohio State, you're just trying to maintain, or as soon as you get to Ohio State, it's like, where's your national title? Where's your national title? Which is, everybody accepts that, but also it's a tough way to live.
No, I hear you there. That is a pressure cooker, unlike many others. He is Doug. Go check out his podcast for sure. Thank you so much, time, Doug. Oh, now I lost pronunciation. I had your pronunciation perfect.
So it's like if you have a dog named Maurice and you tell him to lay. Lesmerises.
Doud Lesmerises, Kings of the North podcast. Go check it out. Doug, thank you so much for the time. Really do appreciate it. For everyone tuning into the show, thank you so much. We're going to talk more tomorrow and the next couple days on Wisconsin, and we'll talk later.